We are a social app, but we're not a social network. We're not social media, especially. I really view Dive as a tool, as a utility. Like it's solving real problems. Like it's not an entertainment platform. It's a communication platform. Authenticity is about to just be shattered on the internet. And I think, again, all of that to me just means like the necessity for real world connection is only going to go up. You're just going to always be questioning what is real, what is fake.
How do you deal with that?
You do. Everything in life is sacrifice. Like every decision you're making has an opportunity cost. Our goal is not to just push dopamine and make you feel good. We don't want our platform to create dopamine. We want people in your life to create dopamine. Like the fuel of a messaging app is the connections you have. In fact, when we see users churn off of Dive, that's not necessarily our platform failing. That could be the community itself failing, right? Notice when you get lucky and then leverage that luck. When done correctly, it's like the craziest thing in the world.
Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here.
So you're not based in Austin. You are based in Austin.
I'm based everywhere and nowhere, but based in Austin for the foreseeable future. Been here for almost a year now. Okay. And yeah, it's my old stomping grounds because I went to UT. So it feels good to be back.
Nice. So UT Austin is I think part of your founder journey as well. Mm-hmm. But before that, let's take it back. What were you doing in high school? So early on in high school, I basically started this YouTube channel reviewing drones and grew it to a few thousand subscribers and had the opportunity to work with not only a bunch of great sponsors and things like that with that, but I ended up getting the opportunity to work for this drone racing company. It was kind of the first real drone racing company. Which one?
It's called Drone Sports Association.
Is that FPV, like the racing?
Yeah, it's like FPV drone racing. Okay. And so it was so random, but I think taught a lot of lessons that are applicable today of kind of riding the waves. So much of startups is timing. And I got into, drones at this time when we didn't even call them drones. We called them quadcopters, multi-rotors. Ooh. It was we were before the rebrand of the entire industry. But DJI, the biggest company out there for drones now, is just basically a startup at the time, was just introducing their first drones in the market, and rode that entire wave for basically the entirety of high school, where again, got to get the opportunity to kind of do some pretty unique travel. I was going out to the Bay Area a bunch. I'm from Houston. So for me, going to the Bay, going to New York, getting to do felt like being very adult and work with these huge brands like ESPN and GoPro and Dell, putting these massive drone races together. Was a ton of fun. Learned a lot, but realized I don't actually like drones that much. As much as it was my whole life, even in high school, I was the drone kid. It was a huge piece of my personal brand. But really, I just love being in a startup environment. I loved that fast paced, everything's on fire constantly. And you're just it doesn't matter what your role is. You just got to put stuff out. It's it doesn't matter if you're the CEO, if you're the intern or anything in between. It's we just have to figure this stuff out and, find solutions to problems. And there's never, ever, a shortcoming of problems at a startup, which is half the fun.
Wait, that's super interesting because so you went from making content on the internet, worked with brands, and then now you started a social app. I did something very similar. I think when I was younger, I made content on the internet. It was a marketing agency. I did travel, launch campaigns and stuff. We used a lot of drones. And then I worked with Lexus and penny boards, and at the time I was hyped. And then I started a social app because I was I really wish there was a better way to make plans with people on a last minute basis. And so it was called Circle with 2 I's because the lowercase i's looked like they were little people talking to each other. Okay. And it was literally just an event app. That's gone. That doesn't exist anymore. But I love making fun of the fact that the first company I ever started was a company that didn't work. And it was that saying of first time founders build consumer.
Oh yeah.
But you actually made it work.
Well, I wouldn't say that yet. We have a long way to go, but, and it's weird because we started, Dive was not my first company by any means. I've had a million and one side hustles over the years. I think my first company was probably technically in middle school, making video games for small clients. I'm non-technical. That was not me building them, but handling I'll handle the business side of that. Then the drone endeavors was, that wasn't my company by any means, but got to be involved in that. And then coming into UT, I worked on 2 different kind of companies before Dive, very casually, more as a student, was let's explore entrepreneurship. And I was doing brand consulting and things like that full-time on the side, or I guess not on the side, but full-time while being a student. So just a lot going on. But yeah, Dive was the first real, we're taking a stab at this. We want to change the world. And that said, it started actually really similarly to what you're saying of you know, like I'm in college, like it'd be so cool if I could just, there's 50,000 kids my age around me. Wouldn't it be so cool if I could just like make, you know, an experience happen spontaneously, serendipitously. I mean, that's where so many of the greats I feel like started. If you start talking to almost anyone that's built in social, like they almost all started with like a college chat or event app.
Facebook,
Yeah, even like Nikita Beer worked on, you know, a dozen or so, you know, chat and event apps in the college space before.
You cracked the model. Now it's just gas and the gas V1.
Pulls. Let's go.
Literally just pulls.
Lightning in a bottle and he can make it strike repeatedly, it seems like now. So, yeah, we were just naive enough to keep working on it and dig in and pivot. I think we're on literally over version 1000 of the app now. Wow. And so we definitely didn't get right the first time or the 100th, but we're now, you know, seeing a lot of magic and, you know, really just excited about the future, but it's been a crazy journey. And like, that's what always excited me about this space is like, no one can deny that there's a problem here because you see all these startups be built in this space, because so many companies are coming out to try to create a solution. As I saw it, I was like, you know, one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is like building something that no one wants. This was like, okay, clearly it's wanted, but it's like, can you do it? Like, can you create a solution to this problem? And yeah, the answer is still a maybe. I think there's a lot of really large companies even still working on this, and we certainly are as well. But it's a fun space, and it's going to stay exciting until someone does solve it.
So it started off as like basically a way to try to meet people who are on campus?
Yeah, the goal was pretty. I would love to say that it was like genius and like so well thought out, but it was really just an event discovery app. It was like, you know, I hosted all these like parties and events in college, and it was kind of like I, as an event host, always wanted more people at my events, and then as an event attendee, I also wanted more stuff to go to. It felt so obvious. Like you have a two-sided market, and both sides like want the same thing, which is just like higher attendance at these events and then more events to go to. And so, like many other apps, we that was the initial concept. It was you could like open it up, be like, I'm a UT Austin student, verify that via your student email, and then get access to all of these events posted on campus. So
you had gated it to UT Austin initially?
Yeah, we were specific to campuses with like the very first earliest versions where it was like a .edu email required. We would
similar to like the Facebook, and they had done it with Harvard.
Yeah. I think and a lot of people still are doing this. I think we're out of the era of like student email gating a little bit more. My mind might change on that one, but we did start that way. I don't think it's as necessary now. I think that filtering happens really naturally. Like if you're a UT student, you're probably mostly hanging out with other UT students. And the core shift as well is that we realize like we don't want to build anything related to public discovery. Like the college level is less public. Now it's filtered to people that are students. They have something in common, which is that they go to the same school. But I think like when it comes to these big state schools, you're talking about 50,000 students. You have a massive spectrum of personality, of background, of experience, all these different things. And so over time, what we've really shifted towards, and kind of like our whole thesis centers around private communities, private discovery. So a lot of the times when I'm pitching the business now, I don't even talk about what we are. I talk about what we're not. So I say we're like not a friend finder. We're not a way to find events in your area. We're not a way to find new groups either. It's about activating the communities you're already a part of. And so it's like most people already know plenty of people. They just haven't actually done the hard work of like building those relationships out, deepening those relationships enough. And you know, that's what we want to help with more than anything is like once you have that awesome friend group or that community or organization or whatever it is, that you can actually like extract the value out of it. Which that's the whole beauty of community is like everyone wins. Like it isn't like, you know, a situation where there's really winners or losers. Like the value of a community is like the sum of all its parts, and like everyone gets to win. Like when someone throws an event, everyone gets to go to it, and that host gets to have the gratification of giving a great experience to everyone. And so it's this like really beautiful symbiotic relationship. Like well-run real world communities are like just the coolest thing in the world to me, and so special when they work. And yeah, it's incredible. What
is an example, or what is your like favorite online / in-person community that's actually been played out properly?
I think like co-living houses are like one of the cooler ones.
Okay. And you have a background in co-living houses as well.
Yeah, I ran a co-living house for about a year, and I think that when done correctly, it's like the craziest thing in the world. Like it's like you have this like it's the hyper serendipity. I think that's like what we're all really seeking out, is this like, it's what college did. And it's doing that post college or in college for some people, but it's that you walk into the living room, you walk into this space, you have a startup idea. You can immediately within seconds get feedback. You're jamming, like someone's cooking over on the counter. Someone else is, pitching to an investor in the other corner. And it's just this like living, breathing organism. And like everyone's helping each other out. Like, we threw like LA Tech Week in 2021, and like that came to fruition in like 6 weeks solely because of the co-living house, because I could never have done that, or we could have never done that had it not been for that. Cause we like walked into the living room before this like happy hour we were throwing, and we're like, yo, like we should do this like LA Tech Week thing. Like Miami Tech Week had been happening. We were like, we could probably like throw the same thing together. And within like literally 2 hours, we're all like committed to this. We're deciding to like pool our resources together. Like who can we call to get to sponsor it? Who can we get to like host events? And like again, like that collective community is what enables doing things that are way bigger than, again, any one of those individuals could have done alone.
So the concept of like Tech Week is interesting because we're about to have a month of SF Tech Week and then LA Tech Week and whatnot. When you guys were initially planning LA Tech Week, how did you go about seeding it with events and sponsors?
Lied to everyone.
Okay.
You basically
Great.
You basically tell, oh man, giving up all the secrets here. This is I'm sure y'all have done this as well with like, sponsors or anything. It's like it's like a two-sided marketplace, right? Or three-sided marketplace. You just have to convince every side that the other side's already going to be there. Or a great example of this too is a dating app, right? If you're going to start a new dating app, you want to compete against Tinder and Bumble, you go to all the fraternities and you say all the sorority girls are there. It's not true. There's not a single sorority girl there. But that promise is going to get enough fraternity guys there that when you go to all the sororities and say all the fraternity guys are there, it is true. Some of those guys are there. And it's kind of this just like back and forth. And so, it's 0 to 1ing something. And so you're just trying to convince everyone that this is going to be real, this is going to happen, and you want to attach your brand to it. You don't want to miss out. You have to create FOMO. You have to create hype. In the beginning, that is not there. Like you just don't have anything. It is just an idea. And you have to do everything you possibly can to legitimize that as quickly as possible, which again is ironically exactly the same challenge as like an early stage or especially a first-time founder. Is you're trying to convince someone to give you, potentially millions of dollars just based on an idea or a very, very rough MVP. In terms of Tech Week, so we basically, we got lucky that we got press. That saved us because that kind of was the first piece of it.
Was that the New York Times article or did that come after?
That came out after. We just had some like local podcast hosts and I think some local newspapers pick it up before the event. And that to everyone was like, okay, this is real. This is happening. This is like legit. And then it became very easy after that to get the other sides. We also were fortunate that we just didn't need that much money because we were leveraging the community rather than, you can buy your way through a lot of problems, but you can also solve a lot via network and again, community. And so for us, we spent a comically low amount of money on LA Tech Week in 2021 because we were able to host at these beautiful venues that were just offices or houses that our friends own.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so, we threw parties in the hills at like these crazy spots, but again, like we didn't pay for those venues, which is the most expensive piece of all of it. We had an alcohol sponsor provide all of the alcohol. We had, friends of ours doing the media for it in terms of like, taking photos and videos. And so, yeah, it was like, I don't even know. I guess the money went towards like security, getting like a step and repeat, a few other things. We spent like so little money because it really was just like the community coming together. And that's the beauty of doing things that are like intrinsically motivated. Like we weren't trying to make money and we didn't make money on it. In fact, we lost a little bit personally, but it really was just this, like, we're trying to bring the community together. There's this incredible timing to all of this as well, which I guess is just luck in terms of like LA was coming out of COVID right when I moved there in May of 2021 was the first time the city itself, actually the week we threw LA Tech Week was the week that LA removed the restrictions for COVID. So, it was just like beautiful serendipity. And yeah, it was like I could not do that again if I had tried to, honestly, back then. Now, once you have the networking, you have the connections, you have the legitimacy, now if I say I want to throw a Tech Week, everyone goes, he threw LA Tech Week in 2021. Okay, I'm sure he can throw a Tech Week again.
Yeah.
But it's that first time, that first like proof of concept that's always the challenge.
I think the point of like calling favors in from friends is interesting. What was the venue that Labib had shown it to you for KOs?
I think it was cross campus. Oh, no, Expert Dojo. Expert Dojo in Santa Monica.
So my friends had thrown an event at last year's LA Tech Week, and so I'd helped them throw it.
Yeah.
And it was an insanely low amount of money that we spent on everything because like the media was our friends. The venue was like pulled in through a favor. But I remember showing him like the event after, and he was like, how much did you guys spend on this? And that was like really kind of interesting. Ami had invited us to one of the events at the house as well. I think I forgot exactly what it was called. I'll try to find it after, but that was also a really cool event. There were like 50, like 100 people there. Also, like he told me very like just all through favors, like friends' house, friends like invite, like all of those.
Ami's the pro at this, especially. You know, and I think we just saw firsthand right when we moved to LA, like all of us were so young at the time. I think like Ami was like 19 or something like that. Like the average age in that co-living house was like 19 or 20. Like no one knew anyone. We'd never been to LA before for most of us.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is being young is a major advantage. People want to like help young people out and give them a shot and give them a platform and give them at least a shot at it. Like I think one of the important things is that when you get that opportunity, for one, recognize when you got lucky. Like there is a ton of luck involved.
Yeah.
Don't try to take credit for it. Like this was not me. This was like the culmination of like literally over 100 people coming together for LA Tech Week. And again, also realize again the unique variables that created the environment that allowed you to succeed in. And so I think Ami is like one of the best at this, and also just showing appreciation and gratitude. Like when people do help you out, like hype them up, shout them out, and you know, give them the credit where it's deserved. And again, yeah, Ami has been able. It's going to keep him doing incredible things because again, he's just so aware of all of this and one of the best at it.
What was the online element and like the community like chat element? Like Dive Chat plays into LA Tech Week, I'm sure.
So actually, at the time we were still in beta, and we were like, do we like go for it? And what we decided was to actually say there was a few things that went into it. One, it's not our market. We were very, especially at the time, targeting extremely specifically Greek life. Tech people are kind of the exact opposite of that in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Two, it comes back to what I said before. It's just that intrinsic motivation thing. If we come out there and we like are trying to like integrate our own company and product into this whole experience,
Feels spammy.
it feels inauthentic, right? It's like they're not then helping the LA community. They're helping Dive Chat. They're helping us like promote our brand and like throw these events that are just being used to sponsor. So it felt really slimy. And I look back and like I feel very blessed that again the product wasn't ready because we ended up that was a huge piece of the decision, to be honest, at the time. But now I think it's like you need to know when to separate like your brand and like your personal connections as well. Like there's a huge difference between pulling strings professionally and pulling strings socially. And when you start like overlapping these without being like very clear, you start tarnishing a lot of friendships. Like you only get to do that kind of thing once, and then you might like burn that bridge fully. And so I think that's something that we were fortunate not to learn the hard way. But we've actually I've since gotten from like certain advisors and mentors of mine, like kind of a warning with that, where it's just like, hey, you know, be careful because I lost friends along the way because we, you know, kind of leveraged too much professionally without like, we made it feel like a social ask when it was a professional ask and we didn't really clarify, versus if you tell a friend like, yo, I want to do this to promote my startup, like they probably want to help, but you got to be open about it. You got to be honest about it. And our relationships were so fresh at this point in LA too. We'd been there for 4 weeks. It's not like these were lifelong friends. These are people
4 weeks.
6 weeks from the moment we stepped foot in LA to throwing, actually 5 weeks from the moment we stepped in LA to the first event of LA Tech Week.
That's crazy.
And you crowdsourced a lot of it, yeah.
It was all entirely crowdsourced. What had happened was we literally, actually within 4 days, I think day 4 of LA, we accidentally threw the first real like in-person tech event in LA post-COVID, which is why it blew up, because everyone had been, you know, basically hunkered down for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I'm from Texas and we were out in Utah, and like, I don't know, it was just like a more laid back, relaxed culture there. And so when we got to LA, I like didn't even think about it. Like it just was like, oh, like we're throwing this, we were trying to throw a dinner with like 12 people and there were 8 of us. And so I put out a tweet saying like, hey, like we're, you know, have a few spots open. It's actually like a meme tweet now, almost of like, we have like 1 spot left for this dinner.
I literally just did that for the F1 race I told you about. I was like 4 seats, 2 seats, 1 seat. There was like 5 left.
Yeah.
filled all of them, but that's funny.
Yeah, it's that creating hype, creating FOMO. It doesn't even need to be, fully true or accurate. But we did that for this dinner, and it blew up so much. It got I think I had literally 40 followers on Twitter at the time. And the tweet got 500,000 impressions. Got over 500 people DMing and reaching out. And this was not random up and coming Gen Z, in the tech world. This was VC backed founders of Series A plus companies, investors themselves, influencers, and everything in between. And again, it's just that timing. And that's why we threw LA Tech Week, is because immediately when it happened, I was like, this is lucky. Again, it's what I said earlier. It's notice when you get lucky and then leverage that luck, leverage that moment in time.
It's because you came from the outside. Because if everyone was in LA and it's everything's shut down, nobody wants to make the first move, right? Everyone's like, oh, we'll wait till something comes. I mean, we went through this in SF after the second wave of the pandemic.
I remember.
And all the companies that wanted to promote IRL, they're like, no, we'll wait for a few to come up and see what happens. And it's no one moved. So it's you guys didn't have the predisposition of right? You just came and you were like, this would be cool. And then you kind of created the catalyst for everybody.
Had we thought about it, we wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, right.
We would have been this, wait, maybe this isn't the right call. Is this the reputation we want even? Or, there have been some, overthinking is just, analysis paralysis is such a reality.
Yeah.
Versus we showed up and it just all happened. We literally didn't have a moment to breathe. There was it's the intentionality was built throughout the process and throughout the experience. And we didn't even know. It's funny because if you go listen to the podcasts or something, or the press that we did before the event, we clearly did not know what it was going to be. People are like, so what is LA Tech Week? And we're like, we should really figure that out. Because we had announced that we were doing it, but we were like, what is, I hadn't even been to Miami Tech Week. I didn't go to the other one. Miami Tech Week was the one to kick it all off from our perspective, but I wasn't there. I just saw about it on Twitter and I was like, okay, it seems like a lot of fun. And so, and also I was like, what does the world need right now? And it was fun. We don't need a networking event. We don't need a networking series. There'll be plenty of that. And there's also people that are better fit for throwing that than myself. What do I think I can uniquely bring to this city? And it's kind of merging the different sides of the tech scene together and helping them have fun. That was the biggest goal with all of it, was how do we create and curate this environment that's going to lead to authentic relationships built around genuine experiences, rather than eye to eye level marketing, or networking that is, I don't know, sometimes I'm not the biggest fan of. It's what I love so much about the real world is you could have, I have no idea. I'm not really not on social media very much. But y'all could have 2 million followers on Instagram. I have no clue. And I don't even have an Instagram.
You don't have an Instagram?
No.
Interesting.
Intentional decide. I also don't have a LinkedIn.
You don't have a LinkedIn?
No.
I know you don't have a LinkedIn. I tried finding your LinkedIn. But
we tried every name too. We were like, we searched.
Kyle. We did
I'm the only
names.
Kyle Brastrom too. It's you can find me name wise, on Google. You'll find everything I've ever put out there basically, but no LinkedIn, no Instagram.
Well, I didn't have Instagram. A Twitter. I deleted my Instagram for about a year or two. And that was very intentional, but you're building a social app. A lot of your friends are relatively big on Instagram. They have a following on Instagram.
Yeah. So first off is I actually don't, we are a social app, but we're not a social network. We're not social media, especially. We're not a consumption platform. I really view Dive as a tool, as a utility. It is it's solving real problems. It's not an entertainment platform. It's a communication platform. And so part of that is in terms of the, no personal Instagram, I've gone back and forth on this one. I could see myself biting the bullet at some point, but at this point I've gone this long in life without it.
Oh, you just never had one?
I've never had one. I've had non-personal Instagrams. I've literally, I was a social media manager at one point for, I've gone through the docket. I understand the value of social media. Dive Chat will be doing a massive social media campaign this fall. I'm not saying that there's not value to it. I think at a personal level, what I love about it is when I'm building out a relationship with someone, it's so it is really high effort, but that means that you build these ridiculously deep relationships. If someone texts me, they didn't just see my story and got reminded I exist. They really thought about me. They thought about me as a person. They're it's so authentic and genuine. And it's definitely a restructuring. So much is different because of it. But I think for me, it works. And it's allowed me to build really deep, authentic relationships with maybe a smaller number of people, but people that I really resonate with deeply.
That's a really interesting point. I had been I'm very active on Twitter, but on Instagram specifically, I'd only been posting on close friends for about like the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Yesterday or the day before was the first time I like started posting again on my stories. Huge text like blew up. It's like, what have you been up to for the last year? Saw the story. Like, what are you guys doing? Are you still in school? Like all of these like questions from people that are very fun people. Love those guys. Like I haven't talked to them in months. I would say that's almost a positive though, right? Because now I'm like reconnecting with people that I used to be super close with that I just accidentally fell off with.
No, I agree. And I think this is like one of the benefits of social media. Part of this is like, if you can use social media in moderation, I think it's like really, really good. It's very high value. I think for me, I recognized that I didn't think that was likely. I'm very competitive. Like if I'm going to have an Instagram, I'm going to want to grow a following. I'm going to want to build out, world-class engagement on the profile and things like that. Like, I have friends of mine that use Instagram. They don't post at all. They only use it for DMs, close friend stories, and they just use the platform more like a tool and a utility. And I really respect that. I just, these platforms are designed to like hook you in and loop you in. And I would rather just like not be in that environment. And I think I'm able, maybe like uniquely privileged to be able to like, I guess like still have a very social life without it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is a lot of value to social media. It's just like very difficult to extract that value while also not getting a ton of negatives.
Yeah.
Because being reminded of people is great, but it can also, again, lead to so much comparison. Like even with Twitter, right? Like it's so easy to get discouraged when you're like an early stage company because there's always something doing something so much bigger than you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, cool. You raised this much money. Okay. This person just raised 5 times, 10 times, 100 times that. It's like, you will never stop. And I think that's something that even though I'm early on in my career, I'm already trying to like, I guess, be careful about is because again, I am like hyper competitive. I love competing naturally, but the worst thing you can do is like try to like fight for that number one spot. And I think social media really naturally pushes you to compare yourself to other people. And I just don't think that's that healthy at a high frequency.
So how would you describe your social life? Who are like the 5 people you have closest? Like, how did you meet them?
My social life, it's comprised of like people that I've known forever and then people that I've met very recently. And it changes plenty. I've also, I've been nomading. And so depending on which city I'm in, it changes drastically. Like this is one of the interesting things about being off social media, especially is like, I'll have friends that like, if I'm not in that, city with them, like I won't see them super regularly, but also like, I want to center my life around my real world experience, rather than around this like digital life. And I think one of the things that worries me is people feeling this false sense of that like removal of loneliness in their life because they have a lot of like online friends, but I don't think that replaces real world friends. Like in the beginning of the internet, what was so great is that we had online friends and real world friends. And it was kind of like the online friends were on top of the real world friends. It was like you're making friends on a new video game or something like that. And like these people existed on top of that real world network. But I think we're getting to a weird stage with this, like, especially these first few digitally native generations that are coming out where like we believe that if we're popular online, that means that we are like not lonely and that we have like a full social life in person. And I think they're just different things. And there's nothing wrong with any of that online presence, but I don't think it's a replacement to that real world presence.
It's like people used to say the digital world was an escape from the real world. And then now the real world is an escape from the digital world.
100%. And I mean, this centers around like our entire core thesis at Dive Chat is that we want to build for that real world. This is something that we're super adamant about and is one of the only things that I can say confidently will never pivot on in terms of the, like, hopefully we have the privilege of working on this for decades to come. Like I really do love the space that we're building in. And like the one piece that's truly the center of gravity of all of that is building for the real world. Like we believe that even like, all the trends right now around AI are really exciting. And I think there's so much objective value that's going to be created, especially financially for a lot of companies. But I think it's going to just push us even further, to desire the real world, because again, like authenticity is about to like just be shattered on the internet. Like we already at the very early stages here of like AI being in kind of like massively adopted. Already I'm like fooled by it all the time. Like we don't even, it's kind of like video editing, right? At a certain point we got to where it's just like indistinguishable. The best video editing is the editing you don't notice at all. Like CGI, like when it's really, really good, like you just
don't notice it.
Literally didn't notice. And I think AI is going to be the same thing. Like right now we're in that fun stage where it's like, oh, like the Pope is wearing a funny jacket, whatever it might be. but there's probably like a ton of stuff happening that we just aren't even seeing right now. And I think we're going to start recognizing it more and more. Like, again, people are going to start falling in love with AI. Like it's like funny. Like you have like the movie Her, you know, a decade ago now, but it's like, we are not far away from that. And I think, again, all of that to me just means like the necessity for real world connection is only going to go up, because authenticity on the internet is going to go down. You're just going to always be questioning what is real, what is fake. Like it's the same thing. Like even what Facebook did for birthdays, right? Like now if someone remembers your birthday, it's just not as significant. Whereas before that, if someone like sent you, or I guess called you on your birthday, you'd be like, oh wow, like that, I can't believe they, it'd be like, whoa. You'd be lucky to have 5 people call you on your birthday that are outside your family, versus now it's like, you know, dozens of friends reaching out. But it's like, this is one of the funny things being off social media is like, I get like plenty of friends reaching out and wishing me a happy birthday, but it's definitely not the same as like my friends with like an Instagram. And if they're going to post, especially, you know, on their story about their birthday, like they're going to get 10 to 25 times as many people reaching out probably as someone who's off social media. But again, it's like, what are you valuing? It's the same thing right now. Is like all of us have the unique privilege of, if we want to, we can write a handwritten letter to somebody if you can get their address, and like that is going to like break through every noise imaginable. Like I think one of the smartest things to do right now, if you're young, is write handwritten letters to very successful people that have like genuine thought and care in them. You're going to skip past the line of 1,000 unread cold DMs, emails, and other outreach. Like finding that like unique door and entryway into a situation is usually found in the real world. It's the same thing I was mentioning earlier, like why I love real world experiences is I can go up to someone who has literally millions of followers and just shake their hand and like build a real relationship. Whereas like I would never have the opportunity to be able to do that on the internet. Like, or it'd be very challenging without like a really strong, warm intro or something like that. It's very, I guess, like a more like archaic view now in certain ways, but I really, it's the same thing with the LinkedIn thing. It's like, I just really believe in the value of like shaking someone's hand, being face to face with them and like being able to look them in the eye. Like I love, one of the saddest things about building Dive was doing so much of the initial fundraising in COVID when it was over Zoom. Like I love real world investor calls because they can see me in my eyes and just like, they're like, he's going to do it. Like he's crazy enough to make this happen. Whereas over Zoom, it's just, you know, breaking through that noise is so much more challenging. You don't want to believe someone as much, I feel like.
Yeah, that's really interesting. One of the things that I went through the whole like digital minimalism thing. So I read the book by Cal Newport, deleted all the social media, and that's why I was off Instagram for like a year or two. And then I think the main reason I came back is because I felt like I was sacrificing or leaving things on the table from like a work perspective.
Oh yeah.
How do you deal with that?
You do. Everything in life is sacrifice. Like every decision you're making has an opportunity cost, and you just have to ask yourself, like, I'm trying to go more on the extreme right now in certain ways. It's really difficult because I also like, again, that technology is valuable. Like I do believe like good tech is so good. And there, again, even with AI, I think it's overall, there is like a huge opportunity for it to be massively net positive for society. Like there's a lot of exciting things that can come of it. You know, and same thing with social media. When used correctly, it's like, it can be 100% positive. Like there are ways to have like a perfectly healthy relationship with it. It's like with alcohol or any substance too. It's like there's, you know, I really do view it somewhat similarly, where it's like, if you can have a healthy relationship with that, like do that. But also you have to be honest with yourself about your personality type, about why you're doing these things and where these actions. And so, again, also part of that though too is like, how many active relationships can you have with all these different things? How many platforms can you be on and still like be present in your real world life? And they add up. And that's like, I do have a Twitter now. I do utilize Twitter, and it's been extremely valuable. Like I've gotten to meet some of our coolest product advisors by like cold DMing them on Twitter or having them reach out to us. Like it's incredible what the internet can provide. But you have to do it with intention. Like, and I do think even for personal social media, I think it is like, be honest with yourself about what you're looking to get out of it and do your best to extract that value of like what is good with, again, minimizing those negative elements of it. And again, that's just like, personal reflection is tough. Like it's easier said than done. And I just don't want to spend a ton of time like asking myself like, okay, like what do I want out of Instagram? Like all this stuff. If I think that I can avoid it and still, live a great life.
Yeah. So let's get back to Dive. So you started with the fraternities. I assume it didn't work, and then you pivoted. Yeah, just take us through that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I it's funny because Dive is really, I guess, like old for a company, I guess, especially run by a younger team. We've been around for, something like 3 years now, but
Oh, wow.
It's wild because it's been, percentage of my life. I'm 24 right now. It's like an eighth of my life and like a quarter of
consciousness when you're like 14, 15.
It's absolutely nuts. And I was working on like the idea behind Dive for like a couple years before that, even in terms of just like, being curious in the space. So again, it's literally like these problems that we're solving. I've been thinking about for like half a decade now, which is crazy. And again, like my co-founder and our like head of design, have been on this journey now for almost 3 years, or I think 3 years now or something like that with us. And, the bond that we have is so unique because of that. Cause again, nothing replaces time. So in terms of the journey at a core level, we've pivoted less than you would expect, I think, being around this long. And that's because I think we're aware of the mistakes we made early in terms of when we first launched, our launch went great. Like we became like a top 100 social app on day one. Wow. We had 10,000 plus people download the app. We had 350 student ambassadors.
What was the launch?
We had a huge ambassador program.
What was that?
So basically we scaled up, again, leveraging the value of community. We scaled up we basically saw that there's unique, this is summer 2020. We saw that there was a unique opportunity where students across the country had lost their internships and had all this free time as COVID. And we were like, we can kind of fill that gap and fill that void. We can, give them some experience, give them something to put on their resume, and leverage that talent that's kind of just sitting there, like so bored. Like it's hard to like even imagine that time back in summer 2020. And we built this community of student ambassadors across, over 20 universities. It was this like, at the time too, like Dive was not a company. Like Dive was like effectively just this like almost like student organization type like project idea. Like I was still a student at the time, but it was this amazing energy, and we just saw students from across the country to come together and rally around this idea. And it was ironically, we look back in this like really unique way to validate the idea. Like instead of building a minimum viable product, we built a minimum viable community. We built this community of hundreds of people that not only would theoretically, of course, download the product, but we're so committed and believed in this enough to like put their time into it. Ambassadors would put in several hours a week. Some would put in far more than that. And
what would they do?
It was we look back and we'll like look at like a Google Drive of all the things that were done back then. It's so many different things from making TikToks, creating social media content, reaching out to student organizations on their campus. And they were also super involved in like product and things like that. We were just trying to get feedback. So it was a very, very high touch. It was super unique. I've been involved in other student ambassador programs in terms of like helping run like larger brand student ambassador programs. Very, very different experience. This was, again, closer to something like a student organization. And again, I don't think we would be able to build exactly what that was ever again. It's the same thing of, again, timing played a huge role in it. Like it was entirely online, but it was also extremely fun. Like I loved being a part of it. And we would have like, I don't know, like happy hours on Zoom where we'd get like 80 students coming together on like a Thursday night and just like hanging out, which during COVID, I really was surprised by how much we were able to build community online. But I think it was because there was no kind of real world option. Like you remove that opportunity cost and that sacrifice. And so people were willing to like be social and put themselves out there and in that online world. But, after that, the program fell apart pretty quickly as the world opened back up. And we did also sunset it because we realized it was a massive distraction. We needed to focus on product. We had focused almost exclusively on marketing. And so, with that, again, we transitioned away from working on marketing to really just going heads down on product and tightening our product feedback loops, bringing in some world-class advisors, people that we could lean on to learn from, and just obsessed over product. We've been heads down on product for over 18 months. And that's something that is like really annoying to do, honestly, as like, especially it's like the business side of the company. It's also forced me to put on new hats and learn new skill sets, but it's extremely rewarding. And I feel so thankful to have have a team that's willing to do that with us, to have, my co-founder, John, and our head of product, Greg, like double down time and time again on this is just so special. But again, I think the payoff is going to be there this fall. We get to do our first full scale launch nationwide, and we're really excited about it.
One thing that you mentioned, like the focus on product, was interesting. So I was looking through Dive Chat again. I have it on my phone. I'd used it. I was in the SF is dead chat, and that was like very active.
Very dead now.
It used to be like extremely active. There was something like every other day. And so I went and I looked at it again, and I saw our message. Like we had a message that was very short. Paparazzi had this, like, when you first download the app, there was like this insane onboarding flow, which was like a video with like tactile, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd never seen anything like that except for in Dive Chat. And so I was like, it's insane because it was such an early stage. I thought it was an early stage product with that much attention to like detail.
Obsession. Yeah. It's, I think that's one of the unique things about us is like, we've never wanted to build like a good company or a good product for being young or for being an early stage company or for being a pre-seed company, like, or any of these things. It's like, we want to build just a great product that can like stand alone and compete against literally the biggest companies in the world. And we, really hold ourselves to that bar. Like with everything that we do, we just want to compete at the highest level. And like make no excuses as well. Like we don't want it to be like, oh, like the app is a little bit slow to send a message, but it's okay. We're a small team. It's like, no, like we got to figure this out. We got to, and that's one of the hardest things about building, I think, in social is that you kind of have to execute across the board between marketing, product, fundraising strategy, even long-term monetization strategy. Like all of these things have to be like really thoroughly executed, and they also have to like weave beautifully into each other to like actually create the magic. Like even with products, like there's really large, I guess, like standout successes in terms of, you have like Clubhouse, Be Real, Locket, these incredible companies that have gotten like the user adoption, and there's still so much to be done in terms of like creating a long-term
Is Clubhouse
success.
still alive?
They actually just laid off like half their staff this week.
Ouch. I was going to ask on that. Like, what is your plan for making sure you guys don't end up kind of dying or becoming irrelevant? We had talked to John Andrew yesterday. He came on the podcast, the Wander CEO, and he had mentioned one of the best advice he'd ever got was your company's going to die, or it's going to feel like it's going to die 3 times. And when you look at
only 3,
that's what he said.
Maybe some heart attacks, some ankle sprains.
There's like one stabbing in there.
We're
at
in
least.
triple digits. No.
Wow. But when you look at consumer social apps, you look at, I think Locket's actually pretty good. I used that for a long time.
I love Matt. Matt, the founder of Locket, is one of my favorite consumer social founders. It's just so authentic. Like if you talk to him, like he really believes in centering your phone around the people you care about. And I think like when you talk to him, it's just so apparent. I just so genuinely believe they'll succeed because he cares so much.
Is that the app that was the founder built it like initially for his girlfriend?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's just, again, like it's like authentic from the very beginning, and he's just stayed true to that. I think it's so easy to get lost. They've raised over $10 million now. It's just a ridiculous amount of money. He's I think around my age, but he cares so deeply for his team and cares so deeply for the problem and for his users. And he's also, again, I think obsessed with learning. I think that's what it always comes down to with founders, especially younger founders, is like acknowledging that like, no matter how much you don't know a lot more. And it's just like, how quickly can you get those, feedback loops? How quickly can you tighten the education loops? Because again, like I still have so far to go, for example.
So what like worries you, or does anything worry you about like making sure you stay relevant? What do you think of Paparazzi? Because that was an app that, like I mentioned it already, like it was very interesting to me because it felt like it would work. Most social apps you see are like, oh great, like another whatever. Yeah. But Paparazzi was interesting because they had a similar angle of like, it's a more authentic social app. They were, I guess, a social network versus, I know Dive Chat is not meant to be that. But it was interesting because it was like now other people. And for context, Paparazzi was on Instagram. I post pictures to my feed. On Paparazzi, I would post your pictures to your feed.
So I already know why it didn't work. When you described it. Yeah.
It is I loved Paparazzi.
They just shut down like a week or two
It was
ago.
this week. Yeah. I think they just sent out a notification and like, they were like the company that first summer I was in LA. Like everyone was on it in LA, especially like my non-tech friends were on it, which is always a big deal. I'm like, whoa, like that's when you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the first time someone told me they had downloaded Be Real, and I was like, whoa, like they're making it. Like, let's go. Good for them. Like, always excited. I think like, with paparazzi, they also, it's interesting because in social as well, like there are a lot of different success metrics. Like they did raise their Series A. They bought themselves a couple more stabs now to like get to build new things. Like I'm assuming the team is still working on some really cool stuff behind closed doors right now, and that'll come out to light. Like, it's like there's different strategies to even like Clubhouse, right? Like they're still, I'm sure internally really confident about their long-term future, and like they're just working on their next act, right? Everyone is just waiting and seeing, even with Be Real, right? Like they're starting to like play around right now, and we're seeing what that second act looks like. They've been working on it for, a year or so now, where they've been like fully adopted out in the wild, and it's going to be interesting. It's easy to look back in hindsight and look at like Snapchat looked probably really stupid back in the day. Like even like the song by the Chainsmokers, like Selfie, is like a joke about selfies. Like everyone was like, ha ha ha. Like the whole world is just going to take photos of ourselves all the time. Yeah. And then the entire world did. And now it's so normal and such an integrated piece of culture.
And like they drop roses.
Yeah. And that's such one of my favorite things about like building in social is like you have the opportunity to literally change the culture of the world in a way that almost nothing else can. Like you can argue that like people like Mark Zuckerberg have more, authority and like influence on society than like pretty significant world leaders. Like, we're talking about billions of people, touching their products every single day. And in terms of attention, there's no one that has control over human attention more than him, which is like crazy to think about what you could do, with that. But in terms of staying relevant, to answer the question, specifically, we're not social media. We view ourselves as a tool, as a utility. It's like one of the reasons that I think, like we have a few like very early WhatsApp people on our cap table as investors. And like, I think WhatsApp's really similar in that like it's lasted this long. It's, like one of the obviously dominant messaging apps in the whole world because it's such a good tool. Like it gets a job done. And that's a lot of what we think about very differently than I think a lot of other social apps is like, our goal is not to just like push dopamine and make you feel good. It's actually kind of not the opposite, but we don't want our platform to create dopamine. We want people in your life to create dopamine. Like the fuel of a messaging app is the connections you have. In fact, when we see users churn off of Dive, that's not necessarily our platform failing. That could be the community itself failing, right? That's if you're only using Dive for a single group, like in your case, SF is dead. If that's the only group you have on the platform, like you probably went from maybe being a daily active user, or at least a weekly active user, to maybe not using the app entirely for months based on that community. Again, like, is that the app's fault? There's pieces of it. We can do a better job in that case. At the time we were running that community, we did start that community internally. And then we stopped. Like we used it as a growth tool, but we took a pause on all marketing efforts. And so as soon as we stopped fueling that engine, it died. And it actually validates a lot of our thesis at Dive, which is like, that wasn't a true real world community. Like I think in the sense that no one knew each other. Like there was over 1,000 people. I think there is a reality too to like community breaking naturally in the real world. Like real world communities typically cap out somewhere between, there's different, approaches and calculations, but somewhere between 150 and 500. Once you break that, like you lose that like first name basis and that trust, right? Like I always say, like when you really know a real world community is powerful is if just by being in that community, you would let someone crash on your couch. It's like, I know nothing else. It's like how like that powerful of a vouch is when like you really know a community is something special. Cause it's like, oh, like that's all I need to know. Like and you see this in Greek life, obviously you see this with country clubs and social clubs at a higher level or a higher income level of society. And then you also see this obviously with friend groups and things like that. Like even for y'all, like I didn't do any particular research. Ami was like, these guys are great. You should chat with them. And I was like, cool. I trust Ami. I trust that real world bond with him enough to where it's just like that vouch alone is enough for me to show up.
What's the ideal use case for this? Like day to day. So like what's your IDP, right? And then how do you get to every day I'm going to open this app and it's going to have a different use than, let's say, Twitter, Instagram, Snap can't give me.
Yeah. So again, we're not like a social app. So actually the companies that I guess you could say we're competing directly against would be more things like GroupMe, WhatsApp, Slack, Discord. We are again like a core messaging tool. And again, the reason you use us instead is really the shared calendar. Like that's the magic of our platform.
Okay.
And that's what's unique is that real world communities do two things. They interact online in the form of a group chat typically, and they interact offline in the form of events. There is exactly one platform that's doing both of those things pretty well and is mass adopted, and that's Facebook. You know, we went in the last 5 years from Gen Z opening Facebook like, you know, dozens of times per week to 65% of Gen Z not even opening Facebook in the last week.
Because there's that shared event calendar, and people used to post like in Facebook groups, right? Like meetups, events, all that stuff.
It used to be like for any type of real world community, it's like you start as a Facebook group. Maybe we use something else eventually, but it's like Facebook group, easy default. And then you work backwards from that. But that default went away. And I don't think anything, now you see like, again, like Slack does get used for this. Like it's not what it's built for. Discord gets used for this. It's not what it's built for. We are built for exactly this problem. And so we see Dive being used for everything from youth groups for churches to fraternities to running clubs to friend groups. And the coolest one of those to me, actually, we also see it being used for like even like one-on-one interactions, which is interesting. Like we think about it a lot as like total amount of engagement, not necessarily number of people. So we see again communities of hundreds of people using the platform, but also like couples will use the app because they talk about so many different things, which people are doing across platforms. Like you're maybe DMing on Instagram and TikTok simultaneously as over text and then snapping someone. Like you can do that all simultaneously within Dive via having channel-based messaging, which, you know, we do in a little bit more of a casual, lightweight way, but it's just having multiple group chats within a group of people. And then again, the events as well is the magic of that. Like if you are dating someone, like what really matters, it's like having plans, like having fun things to do together. And so we always center it back to making moments happen, which is like our company motto is make moments happen. Everything on the platform ultimately centers back to in the real world, getting together, experiencing things. And so again, the daily use cases vary and range so drastically depending on the specific use case, but ultimately it comes down to texting in order to make plans as well as to build culture. We think a lot about building culture within these communities and groups, you know, and that happens via chat, whether that's sending memes or sharing songs that you're into or whatever else. And then making plans. And that's, again, creating events, and events on Dive exist in the shared calendar of your community on the platform. But also recently we launched a feature that allows you to send those events out to people that don't have the app. They can RSVP to the event and receive SMS updates about that event.
Oh, that's a good feature.
Nice. So it's a nice one to, again, it's a great growth loop for us as well to, you know, because obviously one of the challenges previously on the app is like, okay, this event exists, but I want to invite a friend. I'm not going to get them to like download a whole new app just to like join this group or RSVP to this event. And so that's a lot of what we're thinking about now is how do we, you know, open up the platform for the first time and really enable people to have all these shareable moments and experiences on
I think that's the best part of like Luma and Partiful versus like Eventbrite.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like it would make you go through the whole loop.
Yeah.
And then
it
Luma
also
and
feels
Partiful.
like so much like
Sending a Facebook event or like a
event,
you're just like, I don't even want to like send it to them. I don't want to go. It feels too formal.
Yeah,
Partyful is very fun. Yeah, Partyful is like a lot more kind of fun. Luma is a lot more
built out.
Right.
Yeah, they each have their own purpose, you know, and you know, I think again, like I was saying, this whole space is heating up. It's really exciting to see. Like, I think we're kind of just seeing again an objective return to like real world building and people building for real world experiences. And yeah, I just think that's going to only continue over the years to come more and more. And we think we can kind of uniquely position ourselves by not only serving as, you know, an invite tool, but also as like the community management itself. And really, again, centering around those like repeat events with the same group of people. Like we are ultimately a community tool, and the events experience on Dive is just like one of the features on top of that.
Okay, I'm going to hit you with the rapid fire section.
Let's do it.
We do it. Okay. What is the best advice you've ever received specifically about building communities?
Do it in the real world.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the worst advice you've ever received about building communities?
Oh, man, make it big. Like thinking that a community, just because it's larger, is better. Like the size of a community does not equal the value of it at all. Like I think many of the best communities out there can be like a 4-person, 5-person friend group.
Apart from Dive Chat, what's your favorite app on your phone?
I really like Strava, honestly. I'm a runner. And so I really like just like, it just, again, it does a job. It like does it very well. It's social, but centered around utility. So I think there is some overlap there. And yeah, it's a beautiful product. I really like it.
Nice. What's your favorite book?
recently, Dopamine Nation is one of the favorites.
It's on my list.
Yeah,
It's on my
it's a great
list.
book.
I'm gonna let you end off with the last one.
How do you want to be remembered?
God, it's such deep. Guys, I'm 24. Chill out.
He said it was such like a happy, like, how do you want to be remembered?
Because this is all going to be over soon because of AI and AGI.
Yeah,
Baby
we're
AGI.
screwed.
Right?
No, I honestly think it does like center around like it's like being.
Oh, also part 2 to that question: what name do you want to be remembered as? Too. So consider
There's
that.
so much context from before the podcast that we can't even include.
They're like, what is he saying right now? No, I honestly, I actually like worked on like I have this like side hustle concept that I want to circle back to at some point in life. But it's basically like creating an experience studio, kind of doing like what Mischief does. It's like a product studio, but for experiences. And like the whole idea of it is again just like bringing people together. And I honestly like when it comes down to it, I love our like company slogan so much, which is like make moments happen. And like as much as possible, like I want to be like a ambassador for exactly that. And like that I think would be what I would love to be remembered for, is like, you know, someone that helped make moments happen and helped other people do that as well.
Awesome. Well, where can people find you on the internet? Although you don't have
Can't
Instagram or
find us.
LinkedIn.
You can't, that's the whole point.
Got to download the app.
Yeah, if you download the app right now, actually, you can message me personally and I'll respond. We have this really unique feedback flow. So we'll manually reply to everyone. That's going to shut down in the next 6 months or so. But for now, it's a cool shot to, I guess, DM us directly with feedback, and we are ridiculously responsive. And then Twitter, at Kyle Brastrom is the one place that I guess I frequently visit and post still.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you both.